Welcome to the only objections training that you're ever going to need in sales, especially high ticket sales. I call this Mastering Objections, a psychological and tactical guide to preventing and handling objections. Now I use psychological and tactical because we're going to cover some sales philosophy and try to teach you the right way of thinking so that you don't need rebuttals, you don't need scripting, you don't need the exact words to say. But then I'm also going to give you the exact words to say, because even though that might not apply in every situation, it can apply in most situations, and it will lead you to thinking the right way. And a lot of times if you're new, the right words to say, the lines, can kind of be the training wheels until you develop the right way of thinking to naturally say the right things. So with that being said, what we're going to cover is what are objections really? Why do we get objections? We're going to cover logistical versus objections. So what's the difference? There's basically two types. There's logistics and objections. We're going to cover objection handling fundamentals, and then we're going to cover the big three objections and how to handle each of them. Okay, so what are objections? You know, in the dictionary, it says an expression or feeling of disapproval or opposition, a reason for disagreeing. Okay, our simplified definition in sales is, for me, I believe it's just any reason, truthful or not, smokescreen or not, a prospect does not want to move forward after you make an ask or you make the offer on the phone. Okay, now why do we get objections? There's four key reasons. One is logistics. Logistics means they are bought in that this is the right thing, now is the right time. They're bought in that the offer is the right thing to get to their core desire, but there's a real logistic that's keeping them from doing it right now. So for instance, maybe they actually got to move money out of a 401k to do it, but they really want to do it. Maybe they got to move it out of their brokerage account, which does take 3 days. Maybe that because of their financial situation, it does really make sense for them to have to talk to their spouse. Like they can't just go around their spouse's back and spend 50% of their net worth, right, on a program, right? Or maybe it's a real timing issue. You know, sometimes when people are closing on a house or are they in the middle of a divorce, like there's real timing issues that logistically nobody can do anything about. Maybe they're selling their company, like that can be a big thing. So those are all real logistics. And once you really master the front end of the sales process, what happens is logistics become 80 to 90% of your objections. So for me, I very rarely have like actual objections anymore. I just mainly have logistics. The second reason we get objections is a breakdown in the sales process. So if you watch my training before this, which we'll link maybe at the very end and we'll put in the show comments, but if you watch my training before this about the sales process, okay, or if you watched my trainings before, you know I teach that there's a belief ladder and there's essentially 7 reasons or 7 beliefs that the prospect needs to have to buy. There's pain, doubt, cost, desire, money, support, trust. Pain, they have to believe they have a problem. Doubt, they have to believe there's an inability to fix the problem. Cost, they have to believe there's consequences of not fixing the problem. Desire means there's a compelling payoff or a dream island of fixing the problem. Money means the resources and willingness to fix the problem. Support means people around them, close to them, or stakeholders in the decision, support them in fixing the problem. And trust means they trust in your method of fixing the problem. All 7 beliefs are centered around the first one, which is the pain, right? Which is the problem. That's because business is about solving problems, right? Because when you solve a problem, you create value, and then people exchange money for value. So if we know that to be true, sales is really the demonstration we can solve a problem for somebody else. And if we know that to be true, the whole entire conversation is about what? It's about the problem. It's about the gap that's going on, okay? So what happens is we know the whole front end of the sales process is really about checking off those 7 beliefs and instilling those through our questions and in our pitch to the prospect. Now, if we receive an objection because of a breakdown in the sales process, that means we failed to tick one of the 7 beliefs, right? We failed to check one of those boxes. So for instance, the money belief, right? Well, if you don't tick that one, you're gonna get a financial objection. The support belief, if you don't tick that one, you might get a spouse objection. Trust belief, if you don't tick that one, you might get I've heard of this before. I don't see why this is any different. I tried something like this in the past and got burned. If you don't tick the pain belief, then they're gonna say, I don't think I need this. I don't think I can help you. If you don't tick the doubt one, oh, I can do this by myself. This sounds great. I'm gonna try it on my own, then get back to you. Cost, they're gonna say, this sounds great. I wanna do it in 3 months. Oh, I wanna think about this. Trust could also be, I wanna talk to your clients. I need to see a proposal. I need to do some research. All of those things. So when you're new, this is the majority of the objections that you get. So for instance, I've done a tremendous amount of sales training, and one of the big frustrations with any sales trainer is that, let's say we have a group coaching call. If I have a group coaching call and I'm with 10 salespeople, I'm saying, hey guys, so what questions do you have for me that I can help you with right now? Almost every question will be like, well, what do you say when the prospect says blank at the end of the call? What do you say? Because it's like they're trying to almost correct the symptom and like, oh, what's the perfect line I say when they say this? They're trying to correct the symptom, not the root cause. Because if I went back and listened to the call, I'm like, well, dude, everything you did on the front end was terrible. I would have never ended up in this situation in the first place. It's like if you go on a date with, somebody and you're like, hey, I've texted them once or twice and they haven't responded. So like, what do I say to re-engage this person so that they want to get back on a date with me? It's like, well, was the date even good? I think it was good. But in reality, it was a surface level date. There was no deep connection. In reality, like you just weren't the high value person that person was looking for. In reality, you guys had totally different values. But you're approaching that situation like you're trying to win and get the perfect line to get them back on a date. You see what I'm saying? So it's very, very similar with objections. So the 7 beliefs is very key to preventing objections, okay? And again, I did a presentation on this before, and it's all in my YouTube channel if you want to check it out. So when you're new, you get the majority of these objections, or the majority of your objections are because of this. And no matter what, it's almost impossible to handle these types of objections at the end of the sales call because you lost a sale a long time ago. Maybe if you got a really advanced salesperson, they could like actually push through and handle some of these at the end. But then again, a really advanced salesperson would never get to this in the first place. And the only way they would push through it is they'd have to actually go back into discovery and almost like redo a mini version of the call at the end of the call. Third reason you get objections is what's called a conditioned buyer's response. So here, you actually did everything right on the front of the process, but what happens is in any nice situation, because our brain wants to conserve energy, we sort of run these scripts. So for instance, if we're at the airport and we're going through TSA, we're kind of running a script. Like we're not consciously like having to think about every single little tiny thing that we're doing. We're sort of like, our brain kind of is like, okay, like this is what you do. And it kind of becomes automatic. Okay, classic one is when you're driving, okay? When you're driving, you're not consciously thinking about every little thing you have to do. It's kind of like unconscious at that point because our brain's created a script. It does that to conserve energy. It conserves energy because what do we want to do as a species? We want to survive, right? We survive by conserving energy. So a lot of times prospects, they have a conditioned buyer's response. And so they're stuck in a script of the way they make decisions. And this script can also be developed, or it can be developed due to bad experiences or traumatic experiences or just a repetitive experience of being sold a lot over a lifetime. So for instance, somebody just might have like a rule, or they might run a script and it might sound like, yeah, man, I'm 100% in. I just want to sleep on it because that's what I've always done. So you handle that a little bit of a different way. The fourth reason you get an objection is that they're unclosable. Right? So there's no reasonable way that they're going to close now. So like the classic example of this is somebody at the end, let's say it's a BizOp program, and they say, hey, I love this, but I literally have $175 and a 450 credit score and your program's 10K. Like, look, like, okay, maybe that person could sell their car and find the money, or maybe that person could get a loan from a friend, But are they going to be able to get in? No, not really, okay? So the financial unclosable situation can be determined through what's called the open wallet technique, which we're going to cover when we cover financial objections later in this presentation. So understanding the big 3. So really, all objections can be categorized into 3 big categories, okay? The most important one and the worst one that you want to not have this one, okay? But the most important one and the critical one that you sort of avoid and sort of prevent in the front end of your sales process is uncertainty-based objections. Uncertainty-based objections are anything that keeps you less than 100% certain that this is the right thing and now is the right time. So what are some examples of uncertainty objections? I want to think about it. I need to do due diligence. I need to do research. I need to pray on it. I need to sleep on it. I want to talk to one of your clients. This is too risky. Can I get a guarantee? How do I know this is going to work for me? A lot of objections fall into this category. And we kind of all handle them really the same way. This is the majority of the objections outside of the next two that we're going to cover. All right. Now what's key about uncertainty is it's really what the antithesis of uncertainty is certainty that the process that you're explaining is the right thing and now is the right time. So for instance, there's 2 sales you need to make on every sales call. There's the sale on the method and the sale on the product. The method is the way of getting the desire. The product is what facilitates that method, that way. So for instance, Russell Brunson, he makes 2 sales on every single sales presentation that he does. The first one is the sale on funnels, being the best, most effective way to get customers online. The second sale is that ClickFunnels is the best way to do funnels. 80% of marketing and sales is really directed towards getting the prospect certain that the method is the way to desire. Because once you have that, buying the product is a natural byproduct of that belief, okay? So uncertainty objections actually happen when they don't believe your method is the way to desire for the most part. And they don't believe that they should be doing that method now. So if we focus all of our time in the front end of the sales process on really buying them in on the method, then when we get to the product, it's just kind of like the natural next step. Like if you already believe that you need to do the ketogenic diet to lose weight or to heal your epilepsy or whatever it is, right? If you already believe that is the method, then you buying a book on the ketogenic diet or you buying the ketogenic Bible by Lyle McDonald, like that is a natural byproduct of that belief. It's going to very easily happen because of that. So we get uncertainty objections when the buy-in on the belief is not there. The next type is financial. Now there's three types of financials. There's smokescreen, which is like a fake objection. So that's an uncertainty objection, but it's masked as a financial objection. Oh, it's a lot of money, but like really they're just not bought in on doing it. So really you handle that one like an uncertainty-based objection. The next one is logistics, okay? We kind of talked about this before, but they intend to do it. It's just that there's a real logistical issue like, hey, all the money's in this brokerage for real, and it takes 3 days to get it out. Then there's conditions. Conditions is really the unclosable, right? There's no way they can do it. Like financially, conditionally, realistically, they just can't do it. You know, they need to buy a book from Amazon. They can't buy a 10K program. Last one is support. Support is really any reason they're deferring authority to someone who's not on the call to make a decision. Like they're deferring authority to somebody who's outside of our sort of container of a sales situation. All right, so there's three types of this as well. There's smoke screens, which is the same thing, right? Oh, I gotta talk to my spouse, but realistically, they're just not bought in. And I'll tell you how they handle that later. There's permission. Permission is I need to talk to them to get permission if I can do this. Like I don't know if I could do this until I talk to them. Permission sucks. There's courtesy, which is very similar to logistics for financial. Courtesy is I intend to do this. I've already decided I'm gonna do this. I just kind of gotta let them know out of courtesy. You know, we share a bank account. I can't just like shell out 5K and then not tell her, you know, tell him, tell her, whatever. That's the third one. That one's pretty easy to handle. Examples of this, spouse, business partner, those are classic ones. Board, other team members, so like maybe it's their CFO, maybe it's a team who's implementing the project. Like there was one such sales situation I was on. We were gonna launch this marketing thing, but I wasn't gonna be the one that was gonna implement it. And so I had the call and I actually was like genuinely wanted to do it, but I'm like the easiest sale ever. I was gonna do it. And then I talked to like a group of 2-3 people who would be the ones implementing it, and they kind of talked me out of it. So in that case, I actually got off the phone because I was like, I need to talk to them first to make sure they're going to do it. Because if I'm going to pay for it, I got to make sure the team's going to implement it. And then they got to talk me out of it. So like that was a great example of really, it's not like I had a business partner or somebody ahead of me. I just sort of, it was actually technically my direct reports. And so it could be other executives, etc. If there's truly no uncertainty, then these objections are logistics where you may or may not be able to close on this exact call. What's interesting about support is there was real times where you can do everything right to handle this objection and still you need to do a follow-up. It's a myth that you can close every single one of these on the call, especially in like B2B situations. With B2C and it's about, you know, depending on the price point, sometimes you can get away with most of it. But, you know, I can tell you right now, like we sell like a lot of B2B stuff high end and, you know, there's times where you could do everything right. There's just no way the person's gonna make a decision on that call. There's too many people involved. And that's fine. Doesn't mean you're not gonna close. So we handle every objection with the same process, okay? The first thing we do is we pace. This should be one series of bullets, not one under the rest. But the first thing we do is we pace the first objection. This comes from the phrase pace, lead in NLP. So it's very similar, you know, if you study Grant Cardone and Jordan Belfort, or really any sales trainer, you know, they'll tell you to agree with somebody first, and then you start to lead, right? So the first thing we want to do is pace, lead. So we want to diffuse pressure, agree, acknowledge, appreciate, etc., until we start to lead and do a little bit of a reframe. But the first thing we want to do is agree, okay? I'll show you how to do this later. We pace the first objection, and then what we really need to do is tie down on the certainty of the process, that this is the right thing, now is the right time. So if I was selling ClickFunnels, I would agree with the objection, I would pace, then I would really tie down that they believe funnels still like, hey, is funnel still the best way to get to a desire? I'll show you the scripting in a second, okay? So we paste the first objection, we tie down on the certainty that this is the right thing, now is the right time. Once we tie down on the certainty, then two things are gonna happen. Either the objection is real, or we'll figure out the objection was a smokescreen. Either way, then we'll isolate the real objection, and then what we do is once we've isolated it, we'll handle the objection, or we'll reframe, and then we'll ask for the sale, or what we'll do is called a trade. And I'll show you what trades are later. Trades very, very key at the close, especially for B2B. So here's some key points and fundamentals. So the big one here, this is one of my biggest breakthroughs in sales, is no matter what objection you get, you always assume it's an uncertainty objection first, and you handle uncertainty, and then you move on to either financial or support. So even if they give you a money objection, you handle it like uncertainty first, using the pacing the first objection framework, and then only once you know that they're 100% bought in, that this is the right thing, now is the right time, then you handle the objection and treat it as a real objection. That is so, so key. The next thing is we pace lead versus rebuttals. So a rebuttal is like them saying, I want to think about it. Then you say, oh, what do you want to think about? Pace lead is something where, again, you agree with them, you diffuse the pressure, they feel safe, and then you slowly start to lead. It's much, much better way to do it. The next key point is, do you really know what they mean? So I'm not gonna teach you this part in the scripting we're gonna go over later, but a lot of times somebody says like something and you might rebuttal it, right? Or you might pace lead it, but you need to pause for a second and ask yourself, like, do you really know what they're talking about? Like, do you really know what they mean? So an example is like, so let's say somebody says, I like this a lot, I just really need to gather myself on this one. Gotcha, when you say gather yourself on this one, if I can ask, like, what do you mean? Because I don't really know what that means. Like, does that mean that they want to think about it? Does that mean they need to gather their resources or finances? Does that mean they need to gather their, like, what does that mean? So you'd be so surprised how often this happens. Like, you need to actually listen to what they're saying and ask yourself, like, do I really know what that means? It's very, very key, okay? Part two, key points, fundamentals, tonality, right? So your tonality the entire time needs to be that of, I call it the oak tree, right? That just helps me visualize it, right? You're grounded, you're centered, your weight is deeply rooted into the ground, right? So you have this oak tree energy. You're centered, you're grounded. What a lot of people do is they get their expectations so high at the close that they're gonna get this close, and then when they get any resistance, they get defensive, right? That's the opposite of that. So another thing is too with your tonality, if you expect objections every single time, and if you even like train yourself to want a few objections, okay? Like you're like, man, give me these objections. So if you do that, then what happens is your energy sort of raises at the close, opposed to you having what's called an energy dump. So a lot of times like they'll really be expecting the yes right as they drop the investment. You don't want to do that because you get the energy dump. Then that's a lot of times when you get defensive and you get mad. What you really want to do is think like, okay, I'm going to drop the investment. I'm gonna handle 2 to 3 objections, then I'm gonna get the money. That's how you wanna think about this. Or I'm gonna get, maybe it's not the money, but the next step, whether that's investing now or, it depends on your sales process. But I think you get the point. You also, key point, wanna utilize what they told you at the beginning of the call. This is like one of my biggest pet peeves, even with my team, is people who don't take handwritten notes or they don't take notes electronically. Like you can get away with doing it electronically if you do it the right way. When I was in sales, a big fan of handwritten notes. And the reason why is you want to write down these key phrases that you can bring up later to make any objection that they tell you completely incongruent to what they just told you earlier on the call. Because if we study Robert Cialdini influence, the highest driver of human behavior is what? To appear congruent, the consistency bias, right? So typically, by the very nature of you trying to get a phrase from the prospect that could handle any sort of objection they get you, that they might give you later on the call, by the very nature of trying to do that in your discovery, what happens is you're so ready for the objection, and then they don't give you any objections. So by the very nature of preparing for it, by getting the right intel and getting the right information from the prospect, you don't get any objections. It's interesting how that works. But like what you really want is you want to write down in your discovery phrases to where if they told you an objection, you could say, gotcha, no problem. Just so I could understand though, earlier you told me blank, you insert what they said. Now you're saying blank. So, I'm totally open to whatever, but just let's be honest and kind of move any BS from the conversation real fast. Like what's really going on, okay? That's one of the most powerful objection handles you could use. Now, what you want to do for any objection you could get is get a phrase they're gonna tell you earlier on the call, or some sort of perspective or some sort of data to where if they gave you that objection, you could easily say this. Because by the very nature of doing that act, you're not gonna get the objection. That is very, very key. That's why for me, when I was in my prime selling full-time, taking 6, 7 calls a day and just crushing it, I would only get logistical objections, because I would never let myself get in a place at the end of the call where they could give me something that's uncertain or that is anything but, I gotta move money around, I gotta talk to my spouse. But I really wanna do this, you know, because my tie downs were so good, my discovery was so good. I'd really just kind of flushed out anything that could go wrong before we get to the point to where they can give me that objection. So let's go into some exact scripting and examples. So first of all, in sales, we already talked about this. You're not selling them on the product. You're selling them on what? The way of thinking that leads to the product. You're selling them that on a certain way of thinking, or a method being the best way to get the core desire, because by a byproduct of believing that, then they naturally buy the product. The other thing is too, is once you can really embody the right way of thinking, you end up not needing any specific scripting, okay? All you need to do is really follow the pace or the process at a high level that we laid out earlier, which is pace the first objection, tie down that this is the right thing, now's the right time, isolate the real objection, then you handle the objection. And handling the objection really becomes transferring the right way of thinking. Okay, and so what I mean by that is this is why personal development can be one of the best ways to actually learn how to become better at sales and handle objections. Because let's say you're selling a biz op, right? And you're dealing with somebody who has a lot of fear around their own success, or a lot of fear around getting uncomfortable. If you're highly developed and you've done a ton of work on yourself and you've done a ton of personal development, you've studied all, Tony Robbins and all of these people, right? Oftentimes, just by following the framework and sharing with them the correct way of thinking about it, how you would think about it if you were them, you will naturally reframe the objection without really using any sales techniques. You're just coaching them on the correct way of thinking about the situation. Does that make sense? So as a North Star, like I'm gonna give you guys a scripting and exactly what to say, but as a North Star, once you can master this, everything else falls in place as a byproduct of that, because you always have the right thinking. So this is also why the owner of an offer tends to sell a lot better than the reps. Part of it is because usually the offer owner is more certain, right? That's obviously a big part of it. But also the offer owner, if they're teaching somebody how they built a 200 grand a month personal training business, and this person's at 10K a month and wants to get to 100K a month in a personal training business, but they have this fear and this objection, well, this person at 200 grand a month can easily just transfer them the right way of thinking. And says, hey man, when I was in your situation, here's how I would have thought about it if I was you. You see what I mean? And so it becomes very easy to handle objections that way and very, very natural. But as a rep, what you gotta do is you gotta really embody this right way of thinking. And this is why also you need to be really into personal development, really working on yourself, especially if you're in the high ticket space where there's a lot of personal development offers. Like if you're selling a CRM, you really need to know the product, you really need to know what the person's trying to achieve and the methods to get there. This thing still applies, but it's not as, you're not gonna be coaching somebody out on fear, if you're selling HubSpot, for instance. Anyways, financial objections, let's get into it. Now, I know I just said, once you embody the right way of thinking, you don't really need the scripting. With financial objections, I would just follow this verbatim. This thing works so well. So the salesperson says, okay, the investment's just 12K. Then you shut up. The prospect says, okay, that's too expensive. I don't have the money. I can't afford it, whatever, right? Then you say this. This is the pacing the first objection framework. You say, no problem. Now, just so I can stay organized on my end here, money aside, is there anything else that's keeping you from being less than 100% certain that what we talked about, the 4 steps we talked about, is what you need to get your real estate business to 20K a month? So what I did there is I said the 4 steps we talked about, which my pitching framework breaks things down into 3 to 4 steps. So the 4 things we talked about, the method, right? That's also the method, is what you need to get to, and then I said desire, which in this case we'll do real estate, getting your real estate agent business of 20K a month. The prospect says, no, I really want to do it. I just don't know how I can afford that amount. That's almost as much as a new car. Then you say, gotcha, cool. So if I'm hearing you correctly, money aside, you're 100% in, all right? This is key, okay? This is called the double tie down. The first one was a tie down. Money aside, do you believe the method is what you need to get to core desire? They say yes. Then you gotta double down. You gotta say, gotcha, so if I'm hearing you correctly, objection aside, you're 100% in. This phrase is so key because 100% in is just such an absolute language to where if there's any uncertainty at all, we're going to root it out. Because remember, what are we trying to do? Again, we always want to handle the uncertainty objection first, because until they're 100% certain that this is the right thing, now's the right time, they're never going to buy. And so even if you handle a financial objection perfectly, if they're not 100% certain that this is the right thing, now's the right time, you've never really gotten through the smoke screen and found the real objection, it's not going to work. So we need to get that 100% certainty here. And also what we're doing here is we're creating a lot of consistency and momentum. Okay? Prospect says yes. Then you say, gotcha. Well, look, let's say your program's 10K. Cool. Well, look, I mean, most of my clients want to do the investment all up front, but for certain clients in situations where they really want to do it and they're 100% in, it's just the money, then we break it up. So given you're 100% in and it's just a way to make this work financially, are you open to exploring the possibility of that? Are you open to exploring how we can potentially break this up so that you can do it now? They're always going to say, sure. Well, what's that look like? Do you guys do payment plans? How does that look? Well, it depends. Everything's all customized and predicated on what's best for the client. So are you open to having an honest conversation financially, getting everything on the table, so we can see if there's a possibility to do this now, or at the very least, we can make sure there's a game plan for you to do this in the future. Okay, the prospect's like, yep, sure. Okay, great. So in the next 30 days, how much cash flow? So what I'm doing here, by the way, is I'm getting permission to talk about their current financial situation, which you're going to see. I'm going to get how much money's in their bank account. This is key, right? We got the double tie down. We asked, are they open to exploring it? Okay, great. Are you open to having an honest conversation financially? Right? So a lot of buy-in here. Then you say, okay, great. So in the next 30 days, how much cash flow do you have coming in total? Right? The prospect responds. Okay, and how much left do you have over after expenses? Oh, I have 3K left there. Okay, great. So you have about like 2K free net cash flow that you're gonna have in the next 30 days. And what's your cash on hand right now exactly? Okay, that's key. So what I do here is this question is important, but it's an easy question to answer. So I get them in momentum after the permission question so I can tee up the most important question, which is basically how much money is in your bank account, all right? That is the key. Every time I've taught this without fail, like I wish I could just stamp this on people's foreheads. Every single time I've taught this without fail, somebody says, wow, that's aggressive. Wow, I would never tell somebody how much is in my bank account. Wow, whatever, insert objection. I can tell you guys that I've never, if this is done properly, I have never seen somebody not tell you how much is in their bank account. The key is they have to actually really want to do it, which is why you did those double tie downs in the first place. So you got to think to yourself, if you have a prospect on the phone and they are head over heels, oh my God, if I could do this, it would change my life. I would do anything to do this. And then you're like, well, hey man, I know you can't do the full investment, but like, what if we broke it up, but I don't know what we could do. I need to know where you're at financially. They're going to be super cooperative with you, which means being honest. So as long as they're, again, 100% certain that this is the right thing, now's the right time, which is why we did that in the first place, they will tell you how much is in their bank account. So you say, and what's your cash on hand exactly right now? The prospect responds. And then you say, okay, great. Is that checking or is that savings? Okay, and is that the exact number you have available? I'm not asking what you can spend right this second. I'm just asking what you have access to, just so I can get good perspective. There might be a possibility we can't even do this now. So you see what I'm doing there is I had to reaffirm that phrase is very key. I'm not asking what you could spend right this second. I'm asking what you have access to, like how much is actually in there. So again, I know it seems aggressive. If you act like it's weird, it's gonna be weird. Just don't act like it's weird. Act like you've done it 100 times. Believe me, I have done this 100 times. I never get resistance on this, one time. And then you just move on. Okay, in terms of credit, not saying we have to use it, but just so we know how much is available, how many cards do you have, what's the availability, how much is that used right now? And then what you do is like, I always write this down. I'm like, okay, cool. We have like 1,000 on this card, 3,000 on this card. Okay, we have 3,000 cash on hand right now. We have 2,000 coming in. So what I do is I just add up all the resources and I figure out in my brain what is realistically the highest payment plan that they could do. If it's a 10K program, I'm gonna see, is it reasonable for them to do a 2-pay? If not, is it reasonable for them to do a 3-pay? So I do the highest payment plan that they could do. And if I'm kind of borderline between, let's say, a 3-pay and a 2-pay, I'll pick the 2-pay because I always loop down close to the 3-pay. Does it make sense? And then I do this phrase here, which is key. Because right here, what we did just flush out a lot of stuff. So what we need to do here is slightly move away and get them to come closer to us. So then I just drop in this real quick, and you still really want to do this, right? Okay? And they say, oh yeah, I still really want to do it. Cool. Because look, I don't think the best thing for you right now is to drop 10K on a credit card if right now that's basically you zeroing out your net worth. But I also don't think, based on what you told me about your real estate business, the interest rates rising, and basically all your word of mouth referral sphere of influence pipeline drying up, and you not doing a deal in the last 3 months, you're getting crunched on your rent. I also don't think the best thing for you is just to sit here like the frog in the boiling water with the water getting hotter and do nothing. So look, what I would do if I was you, and what I'm willing to do, is let you in for half down, so $4,900. That way, you can come in, you can implement the first series of the program, really get your authority campaign running, get ads launched, get a new leads coming in to where 30 days down the road when that second payment comes around, you already have a full pipeline, you've already had several listing appointments, you already know this works, and that second payment almost becomes an afterthought. So, if I'm willing to do that for you, are you willing to move forward right now? So you see, that's the trade, okay? Now, I did skip some of this. Some of this is pretty good here. Like you can see, I said in 2 clients for you, 6K break even. So I'm basically giving them upside downside. You can drop something like that in, but I kind of just went right to this. But you see what I did there is I don't think the best thing for you is to do X. I also don't think the best thing for you to do is Y. So because of that, here's a special thing I'm open to do for you. If I allowed you to offer so that you could come in future pace to where the second payment down the road is an afterthought, if I'm willing to do that for you, are you willing to move forward right now? So you see how what I did there is I made a trade. So my ask for the sale is a trade, okay? I'm trading better terms for a decision right now. Does it make sense? Okay, I'm telling you, this is key. Now let's say they said no. I'd say, gotcha. Well, obviously we had a financial conversation. We know that you can do it. So what's really going on? And then like I would try to, do you not feel like this is gonna work for you? No, I feel like it's gonna work. Okay, is it just a little bit of nerves? Yeah, it's just a lot. Look, can I be honest with you? The nerves are good, right? Like I would think you were an alien if you weren't a little bit nervous. The nerves are good. That means there's some weight to this. There's some meaning to this. Nothing ever great in the world was built by somebody who wasn't a little bit nervous at first. So you really have 2 options. One, you can look at those nerves and you can collapse and you can shrink and you can go back to your comfort zone, which is the only thing you know, but at the same time is exactly what's gonna get you more of what you've already gotten. Or we can feel those nerves, we can feel the fear, and we could do it anyways, right? And we could take one step forward to being outside of your comfort zone, which is what? The only place growth can happen, outside of your comfort zone. Which one of those 2 decisions you wanna make, right? So I'm gonna press, and then if I still got resistance to that, that's, if you're still watching this at this point, you're like, okay, this is pretty good. If I still got resistance to that, then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna say, okay, look, I totally get it. So look, if I'm willing to go down and let you in for a third down, so a 3 pay, so you only have to come in for $32.66. If I'm willing to do that for you, will you move forward right now, take the bet on yourself, and when you do get results, give me a case study. So you see how now I go back to the trade, but instead of going down and just saying, well, what if we do a 3 pay? I say, hey, okay, what if we do a 3 pay? You still do it now, and you give me the case study. You see how I up the ante with my trade? You don't wanna go down without getting more. Does that make sense? Okay? Then they say, feels good. Sure? Yeah, they're like, yeah, it feels good. Cool. You ready to get started on some homework? What's your billing address? That's always my close. So that was financial. Let's go to support. So let's say they say, okay, the investment's 10K. They're like, okay, great. Sounds really good. Got to talk to my wife. Sounds really good. Is this the best number to get you at? Yep. We'll trade contact details in just a second. Hey, just so I know and can stay organized on my end, aside from just really letting your spouse know, is there anything else that's keeping you from being less than 100% certain that this is really what you want to do? No, I really, really want to do it. Okay, cool. So let's just pretend for a moment that you had already told your spouse about this and they said, hey, whatever you feel like is the best thing to do for our family, yourself, and our business, I want you to do it. If we had already had that conversation with her and you were on this call right now talking with me, will we be 100% moving forward and you be doing the investment and getting going right now? Okay, that's a double tie down, right? So I did the first tie down. Is there anything else keeping you from being less than 100% certain? Then I do the let's just pretend for a moment. That's very similar to the one I did before. And I might even throw in a third confirmation. Okay, so letting her know aside, you're 100% in. I might even throw that one in there too. You see how I want them to give me, and what happens is here, I should have mentioned this earlier. Very important, okay? When you do the double tie down sequence, or in this case, a triple tie down, what you wanna watch out for is their tonality. right? Because they might say yes. But if they say, I think so. Okay, that's not a yes. So you found the uncertainty, right? So like what you want to do is you want to say, I think so. Like, hey, just be honest with me. What's really going on? And when you do that, when you call it out, like it's actually funny if you do it in the right way, but if you call it out and then say, hey, just what's really going on, what it demonstrates is that you're with them emotionally and they're gonna feel safer telling you the truth. Okay, especially if up until this point you've been on their side, you haven't been defensive. And that's really all I want. Like, I just want a real conversation to see if I can handle the concern or not. But I just don't want to have a fake conversation where they're not telling me like what's really going on, you know? So that's the deal. So once we get the double tie down, then we go to step 2, which is we cover the 2 spouse objections. So no, I really want to do it. I just want to talk to them first. Then you say, okay, great. Awesome. I totally get that. I agree with you. No problem at all. Now, just for clarity's sake, is this like a respect thing to where you're going to do it regardless? You're just going to let them know. So you're 100% in. You just got to let them know if 4 or 5K leaves the account that, like, hey, this is what the 5K is for. I'm going to do it. But even, no matter what, like you're doing it. Or 2, do you really need to have like a sit down conversation, run everything by them, and get their permission and full buy-in to move forward? Okay. So what I basically did here is I said, is this courtesy or is this permission? Remember that from earlier? Is this courtesy or is this permission? But I got to kind of frame it in a different way here. I can't say, is this courtesy or is this permission? So what the thing is here is what's interesting is a lot of times they will not want to put themselves into one of these 2 categories. So like, unless they say, oh no, dude, I'm going to 100% do it. I just got to like let her know or let them know. Unless they say that, I assume it's number 2. Okay. Because if there's any, same thing with like the uncertainty objection, if there's any sort of like an ambiguity, because they kind of know what you're asking. It's like, do you need his or her permission? Like nobody really wants to say like, yeah, I do. But if there's any hesitation, they do. It's just the reality of it. And that doesn't mean there's anything bad on the person. That just could be the situation that they're in or the agreements that they've had. So step number 3 is once we know, then what we want to do is go through a little mini discovery. So then what you want to do is you want to say, okay, great. Well, what do you think she'll think about this or he'll think about this? What do you think they'll say? I have like she in here, but I used to sell all like male realtors. And so a lot of this scripting came from back in the day. So what do you think she'll think about this? What do you think she'll say when she hears the investment? Is she supportive of you trying to fix problem? Is she supportive of you trying to get your real estate business back to where you're doing 2 deals a month? Are you guys on the same page that this is a problem in the first place? Is she a realtor too, or is she involved in your business? What does she do? Does she know about us? Does she know you're on this call? Oh, well, what would she think if she knew you're on this call? And then you could throw in these optionally. Can you talk to her right now? When do you think you can call your spouse? I mean, this is more of like if it's a courtesy thing. Okay, cool. Can you just call her right now? So that works. I've done that many a times. And so what we're doing here, you might not ask all of these, but you really need to figure out like what is the full context, right? And so after you do your discovery, mentally, you need to say, okay, great, I'm gonna take this one of 2 directions. Direction 1 is gonna be a deposit close, where you're gonna get money and you're gonna get them in the process and really like it's gonna end up probably being a sale. Number 2 is a follow-up close. Now granted, if it's courtesy, deposit close. If it's somebody who you feel like, especially they're more competitive, they're type A, they're more alpha, deposit close. If it's somebody where it's a heavy permission thing, like it is gonna be a serious conversation with the spouse, follow-up close. If it's somebody with a lot of feminine energy, like they also need to really feel it out and make sure things are done the right way and flows the right way, follow-up close. Okay? You have to delineate between those 2. And a lot of it's a gut instinct. So let's cover the deposit close first, okay? So the deposit close is perfect. So one last thing before we hop off. Can I give you some advice of how I would handle this if I was you? And if you've like made it, if you can have any relevant experience here, can I give you some advice of how I'd run this by my wife, especially like how I did it when I was in your situation trying to blank? Like that's huge because it makes it personal. So then you say this. You say, well, look, there's really 2 ways to go about it. Either number 1, it could be a conversation where you say, hey, honey, that business of mine that I spent a ton of money on and it's giving us all these ups and downs, it's giving us stress, I constantly complain about it. Well, I hopped on with this guy from the internet and I think he might be able to help us. It's 7K. What do you think? Okay, so if you did that, do you think it would work? They're gonna be like, no, like, exactly, all right? So this is what I would do instead. This is the second way you can go about it. You can sit down and tonight you can tell them confidently, hey babe, I know I let you down with this business, and I know that despite all of that and me really not even showing up the right way to pursue my purpose and to pursue this business, I know that you supported me up every single way to every single step up to this point, and I know you're totally with me and you want me to win. I also know, because I haven't shown up the right way, that there's been a little bit of a breach of trust, and that now you're probably a little bit skeptical. But look, I want you to know that I've decided and I've committed to growing this where it should be already, and I found us somebody to help us get there. However, I didn't want to go behind your back and make this decision because I do value and I want your emotional support and buy-in on this all the way. So, in order to let you know I am serious about this, what I did is I put down a $1,000 refundable deposit with this company so that both you and I can hop on the initial onboarding call with the company together. Then afterwards, once we're on the same page that this is the best direction moving forward for our family and the business, then you can 100% sign off on it. Otherwise, if we can't agree on it, we can just ask for a refund. So the onboarding call is this time. Do you want me to reschedule it or can you make it? So you break role play. What I found after doing thousands of these calls is number 2 is not only what's going to keep you in momentum, because right now you have momentum. You get off this call, you're at risk of losing the momentum. So it's not only going to keep you in momentum, but at the same time, it shows commitment and it keeps the trust intact between the two of you in the meantime. Does that make sense? And then, as a salesperson, you say, cool, so what days and times can you do the onboarding call? So then you set the onboarding call on the call, and then, you just kind of get the billing info, you let them off, you kind of, you almost do the whole closing thing, you button it down, you make them feel really good, you pump them up, etc. Now, here's the follow-up close. Right? Now again, I've been kind of framing this as a spousal situation, but follow-up close a lot of times is what you're going to be doing for business partners, if they have a board, if they have a CFO, etc. So you say, gotcha, cool. Well, I appreciate you being open to be honest with me about that. Great. So look, I definitely want you to go, and granted I did this with spouse again, I definitely want you to go talk to your spouse, but I want to remind you that there's 2 ways to go about it. And I say the first one's the exact same. You can go and it could be this wimpy conversation, or number 2, it could be a situation where you tell her confidently, like, hey, I know I've let you down in this business, and I know despite that, you supported me every single step along the way. And this time, you're probably a little bit skeptical if I'm really even serious about this. Am I just playing games, or is this my real true purpose and my true career? And I want to let you know that not only have I decided and committed to getting this where it should be, but at the same time, I've found somebody to help us get there. But before I move forward, I have a follow-up with them tomorrow. Before we move forward, I want to get your emotional support and buy-in so I know we're in this together. And then after you go through the 2 reasons, you say, now, let me ask you, which one of those 2 guys or which one of those 2 people do you think is going to convince their spouse? And they're like, well, obviously number 2. You're right. Because if you're not certain about this, then they're not going to be either, nor should they be. Because with scenario 1, you're weak and uncertain in your direction as a leader, as a partner, and as a provider. So why would they trust you? So the real question is not, is your spouse going to sign off on this or not? The real question is, are you going to be the leader and provider that you've always should be, but that you haven't? And that kind of fires them up, right? So I kind of said all this. And then you finish off by saying, great, so when do you think you'll be able to talk to your spouse? Now, if it's anything other than tonight or tomorrow, then you want to call it out, all right? Like if they're like, well, next week, like the F, like next week, it just doesn't make any sense, right? Like normally people see their spouse like every night. So sometimes I can understand 48 hours, but yeah, I mean like it should be tonight or tomorrow. Now make sure, another common mistake, make sure they're not like, a lot of times like salespeople get a little like hasty. So you'll be like, when do you think you'll be able to talk to your spouse? They're like, oh, 4 p.m. today. Okay, let's talk 7 p.m. I would never do that. I would always just do the next day because a lot of times something happens, they don't talk to them yet, they ghost you, it's like all this shit. And then so here you just tie it down. Nothing crazy. Finally, let's go on to uncertainty-based objections. Remember how in the beginning we paste the first objection and we're trying to find any uncertainty. So what happens when you ask these phrases of like, this aside, is there anything else that's keeping you from being less than 100% certain? Or are you 100% in? When you get hesitation, or if you get like, I just don't know if this is gonna, like a lot of times that gives us the uncertainty objection. So I'll give you an example. The investment's just $12K. I like it, I'm gonna think on this. No problem. Now, just so I can stay organized on my end, what's keeping you from being less than 100% certain that you feel like this is what you need to get your real estate business at $20K a month? No, I really like it. I just want to think about it. Okay, so you just want to sleep on it for a day? Yeah, I think so. Gotcha. So when we talk tomorrow, if you wake up tomorrow feeling the same exact way that you feel right now, then what you're saying is we're 100% doing payment and moving forward. And then let's say the prospect says, I still need to think on this. right? So you see how what I did here, this is the double tie down in this example. And this works for I want to sleep on it, right? So what I did here is I said, so when we talk tomorrow, I just assumed we're going to talk tomorrow. Because I also prefaced here, so you want to sleep on it for a day. Got it. So when we talk tomorrow. So it's a very good assumption. If you wake up feeling the same exact way that you feel right now, then we're 100% doing payment moving forward. Okay? So you see I use this very good direct binding language to almost, I actually try to get them to say that they don't think it's going to work, or like that they no, I have a different reason. Because that's the real reason, So I want to handle that. So then, so if they wiffle waffle, which is this example, then you want to cut them off. And so I just make it funny. I'm like, okay, so we're not 100% certain then, So let's be honest, like from a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being like, I hate this guy, I just want to get off the phone, and 10 being, okay, that's exactly what I need. Where do you feel like you followed exactly in terms of this process, the 4 steps we covered being the thing you need to be able to get to X, Y, and Z? Probably a 7. Got it. So honestly, what's keeping you from being a 9 or a 10? Exactly. So now you have the objection isolated. Anytime even when you ask that, if you still get this like real wiffle waffling, like, there's just a lot. What you got to do is you got to give them an objection. What you want to do is give them one around fear, nervousness, or it being a big decision. Yeah, it's just a big decision, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Can I give you a little bit of coaching on that? So what I did is I gave them the objection, and now I can handle the objection I just gave them because I gave them the objection in the first place. So a lot of people, they don't know why. It's really just fear, but if they don't know why they have the objection, they're just wiffle waffling. You give them one, then you handle the objection. So you give them one that represents fear. You can't say, is it fear? No, it's not fear. Duh. But sometimes you can say, is it a little bit of butterflies? Is it a little bit of nerves? Is it just a big decision? That's the one I like. Is it just a big decision? Yeah, exactly. Can I give you a little bit of coaching on that? Can I give you a little bit of coaching on how I would think about this if I was you? Very key, okay? Very key. So, another example. The investment's just 12K, all right? Sounds good. I gotta see if I can afford it. Is this the best number to get it back to you? Yeah, no problem at all. I'm gonna make sure you have all my contact information by the time we end this call. Now, just so I can stay organized on my end, finances and everything aside, is there anything else that's keeping you from being less than 100% certain that you feel like the 4 steps we covered is really what you need to get your real estate business to 20K a month? Prospect pauses and they say, I think so. I think so. Well, that doesn't sound 100% certain. So let's just be honest with each other for a second. What's really going on? So you see the difference, right? So the big thing is here, I want to show you examples where I call it out. Another example, the investment's just 12K. Sounds good. I got to see if I can afford it. Is this the best number to get back to you? Then you say the same exact thing. But instead of they say, I think so, they say, oh, no, I really like it. Got it. So money aside, you're 100% in. Well, I wouldn't say 100%. What do you mean? Okay. So you see, a lot of times you get the real objection when you use this one. Okay. Then you go back into discovery. You can use a scale of 1 to 10, etc. So after you do this part, what happens is you isolate it down to a lot of different issues. So let's just cover some random objections and how to handle it. What if it doesn't work? Hey, I hear you and I appreciate that. Just so I can stay organized on my end, what you're saying is despite all the couple hundred case studies I showed you on this call, despite having a 95% plus success rate, you're worried you're going to be like the only lucky one it's not going to work out for. Haha. And it's like haha thing, right? And they're like, oh, but it's just one of those things. I've been on these calls before. Look, dude, no worries. I get that, right? Can I ask you an honest question? If you come in and you do this, are you 100% going to put in the work? Okay, great. And then when you do come in and you do put in the work and you run into a snag, you run into a problem, you run into a challenge, which I can't guarantee anything in business and life, but what I can guarantee is when you go after something what you want, there's going to be challenges, there's going to be snags. So when you get to that point, which you will, are you going to bury your head in the sand or are you going to be vulnerable and raise your hand for help? No, I'm going to raise my hand for help. So look, if we have a 90% success rate for people who do the work and we've not only done this ourselves, but we've successfully taught other people how to do it, and you're 100% going to put in the work and you're going to raise your hand when you're going to help, I guess my only question for you is why wouldn't this work for you? Yeah, you're right. It just sounds so silly. Can I ask you another question? Is the real reason just a little bit of apprehension? Because this is a big decision. That's exactly what it is. Can I give you a little bit of coaching on that? So yeah, you always go down because I know if I get into the big decision thing, what I'm really handling is a true thing, which is fear. So it's like uncertainty-based objections, we kind of handle the bullshit uncertainty thing, But what we really want to do is unlayer that and get to fear, okay? I need to sleep on it, okay? So again, let's say you've already done the whole no problem. Is there anything else that's keeping you from being less than 100% certain? Blah, 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 blah. Now, I actually just covered this one. So the only difference here is what you're gonna do is, there's two different ways you can do I wanna sleep on it. You can do it like I did earlier, where if you wake up the same way you're feeling right now, are we 100% moving forward and we're doing payment? I always love to say, are we doing payment, or are we doing the investment? Are we handling the investment? And I preface it to being tomorrow. So the first way is, if it's somebody with a real feminine energy, I will just let them actually do the 24-hour thing and we'll do it tomorrow. If it's somebody who I feel like will accept a challenge, then what I'll do after that is I'll say something along the lines of like, well, look, I totally get it, and I don't want you to do this if you don't feel like you're 100% into it and you're 100% aligned. Like, you should feel aligned and pulled toward this, not pushed towards it, right? Exactly. But at the same time, I feel like there needs to be a line in the sand. You just got done telling me that the last 3 years was the worst years of business you've ever been in. And you got also done telling me that the next year you want everything to be totally different than the last year. And the year after that, totally different than the year before. And you told me how 2 weeks ago when X, Y, and Z happened, it really helped you get to a point where you knew something had to change and something's got to give. You can't keep doing the same thing and getting the same result. You told me all of this. So I don't want you to hop in if you're not 100% aligned. I also don't want you to get off this call without drawing a line in the sand in some more metaphorical way, stepping across it and saying enough is enough. And regardless if it's this program or not, something's got to change. So because of that, what I'm willing to do for you is I'll let you in for half of the payment now. So the 2 pay like we discussed. And then if you wake up tomorrow and then the bottom of your bones, you feel like, man, this is totally out of alignment, you just send me a text message, no questions asked, we'll refund, it's fine. So if I'm willing to do that for you, will you take the bet on yourself and make the commitment now? The commitment that the last year won't be like the next year? Because I think that's the best thing that you should do. So I didn't go from the script here, but you can see it's like, this is basically the same thing. You draw the line in the sand, la la la. So due diligence, can I talk to one of your clients? And so again, you might not always do that. Yeah, that one works well. Like, I remember using that one time with a kid who was, you know, in his 20s, he was successful, but like he just kind of was getting complacent. He really needed to bet on himself, you know? So you want to use that with people who are going to respond well to challenge. So due diligence, I want to talk to one of your clients. Okay, we handle this one the same way. We say first, okay, yeah, no problem at all. I mean, that aside, is there anything else that could keep you from being less than 100% certain that this is really what you want to do? Gotcha. So basically, once I connect you with one of our clients and they share with you the experience, if that experience aligns with exactly what I told you on this call, what would you think the next step would be from there? If they don't say I'm moving forward, obviously there's a different objection. But they should answer this question, oh no, we'll be 100% moving forward. Gotcha, cool. So in situations like this, where somebody's 100%, they just want to verify with a client, what we do is connect you over Messenger with the client. You can ask any questions what you want. All I ask is that you keep everything over Messenger just to respect their time, because they're a busy financial advisor. Obviously they're doing 20, 30K a month because they've used our system. And so we don't want them to be our outbound, inbound sales rep for all of our clients who have questions. Does that make sense? Do you think that's fair to them? Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna make that connection now. I just did it. So do you see it on Facebook? Okay, let me know when you see it. What specific questions do you plan to ask? Just curious. Okay, great. Can you type those out as soon as we get off the call and send them to our client? That way you can have the answers before a follow-up in 48 hours, which I just like preface it's gonna be in 48 hours. And then you know, perfect, right? So what if they say I don't have time to implement, right? So again, no problem. Timing aside, is there anything else that could be being less than 100% certain? Gotcha. So what do you think would be the ideal timing? Oh, January 1st. Okay, great. So if it was January 1st right now, would you be 100% like, would we be doing the investment right now, taking payment, and you be moving forward if right this moment was January 1st? 100%. Gotcha. So timing aside, you're 100% in. Perfect. So can I be honest with you for a second? I totally get that, but can I be honest? If the very problem that you got on this call to solve, which is not having enough time in your business, as the exact thing that's keeping you from getting started on fixing the problem, you realize you're in a self-perpetuating loop and you're stuck, right? So the real problem is not that you don't have time for this. The real problem is a mix in priorities. Because if you were being 100% honest with me earlier and you told me that lead generation was the problem, and you're also being 100% honest when you told me that 10 out of 10, this was exactly what you needed to fix your lead generation so that you could get your real estate business of 20K a month, then what other priority should you be working on? Because you've already identified that lead gen's the problem and this is the best way to fix it. Isn't that your number one priority? Isn't that what you should be doing right now? So again, and this is like not really an objection handle, as much as this is just like a good, healthy way of thinking. That's what I was talking about earlier. You're transferring the thinking to somebody else. Is there a guarantee? So easy way to handle this, what I recommend nowadays, just have a guarantee, you know? But here's another way to handle it if you don't. Because sometimes as a sales rep, you don't have control. So we can definitely talk about that. Now, just curious, is there a specific reason why you're asking? Right? That way we can find the objection behind the real objection. Gotcha. Well, here, I appreciate that. Can I ask you another question? What's serious in your things in life? What's serious things in your life? Things worth doing, things worth having? Which one of those things are 100% guaranteed? The truth is, they respond. The truth is, it's not even guaranteed that any of us are going to wake up tomorrow, right? So not knowing that nothing is 100%, it's immoral and it's unethical for me to try to predict the future for you. But what I can say, so I can't guarantee you you're going to get any sort of result. What I can guarantee you is that we have an impeccable track record and that we will give you everything and every resource that you need to succeed. Does that make sense? So look, right now I have the results that you want. You know, this is if like you're teaching somebody to do what you've already done. Right now I have the results that you want, right? And we've helped hundreds of other people get those results as well. So the real issue is, are you going to be the type of person who shows up and raises their hand when you need help? Because if you can do those two things, well, it's not necessarily going to be easy. You can have everything you need to succeed. Does that make sense? So which of those two things, so are those two things something you're willing to do? Great, what other questions do you have? You can probably get rid of this. I see what I was doing there, but you know, I think that's kind of like just talking on. Too big of a risk, this is one of my favorite ones. So this is very similar to the framework of how I would handle the big decision thing, okay? Because what's happening here is that they're like, man, it's just risky. Oh, it's just a big decision, okay? This is what you say. You say, gotcha, now I totally hear you on that. So if I'm hearing you correctly, by the way, you're saying that right now, I mean, this is a big decision, right? You gotta really feel it out because it's risky, yeah? Perfect. Let me give you a little bit of coaching on that, if that's okay with you. I just want to give you some coaching out of my experience getting to X, Y, and Z result and helping people do X, Y, and Z. Okay? Your goal, like you told me on this call for your real estate business, is $50K a month, right? Right. Ultimately, $600K per year. More than most doctors, most surgeons, etc. Right? That would put you in probably the top 0.01% of top income earners in the world. Pretty crazy, right? Now, have you ever wondered why there's so few people making that amount of money, $50K a month? Despite wanting it? Because everybody wants that, no? But there's very few people actually doing it. So what's the divider between the two? It's the fear of risk. So the real question is not, is this too risky for me or not? The real question in this situation is, who do you want to be? Because essentially there's two types of people you could be here. Number one, you could be the type of person who bumps up against that divider, that glass wall of risk. And instead of breaking through, feeling the fear and doing it anyways, they contract and go to their comfort zone where no growth can happen simply because that's what they're comfortable with and that's the only thing that they know. Or you could be the type of person when you bump up against that, you feel the fear and you do it anyways. You know that instead of making decisions out of a place of circumstance, I'm going to make decisions out of a place of vision. And when you can bump across that into your own comfort zone, you open yourself up to new possibility. So which one of those two people do you want to be? So that's how you handle that one, right? This is huge. I love this framework. I think I just made it up on the spot on the sales call. You know, you take thousands of sales calls, you just make some of this stuff up. But again, this comes from I think I read this in a book. And I just was sharing my own thinking with somebody else. Now, big decision, nervous, scared, all that stuff, right? Gotcha. So let's say, yeah, it's just a big decision. Gotcha. So it's just a big decision. So you know it's what you need. It's just a little bit of nerves then, right? It's good. I already mentioned this one. It's good that you're nervous. The nerves are there for a reason. And that's good. That means there's some weight to it. There's some meaning to it. Nothing ever great in this world was built by somebody who wasn't a little bit nervous at first. So the nerves is okay, but deep down in the pit of your stomach, you should know, despite that fear and the nerves, that it's the right thing. And earlier when I asked you how you felt, you said that's exactly what you needed, didn't you? So again, you could even use the risk one for the big decision. But here, you're really coaching them through how to make decisions and how to essentially get over fear without saying it's fear, because nobody wants to say, I'm scared. Nobody wants to say, oh, it's fear, okay? We're almost done. This is a really good one that you can use. Just don't use it like a rebuttal. Make sure you still pace lead. But if they say 10K is a lot, right? Gotcha, so money aside, then you do the whole thing, right? Let me ask you a question. Has 10K always been a lot to you? moving forward from here, this point day forward, do you always want it to be a lot? Or do you want to throw around 10K whenever you know something's going to 100% help you? Well, that's the exact reason why you should do it. Because you're never going to get out of the place to where 10K is a lot to you if you make decisions out of your circumstances, not out of vision. If you make decisions based on 10K being a lot, not 10K being necessary and actually very small to make 100K a year for the rest of your career. You know, most objections, you can frame it as the exact reason why they should actually do it. So that's a good one to use, very, very simple, that you can throw in there as well. So let's finish this off by covering some looping closes you can use. The first one is payment plans. We already covered this with the financial objection, right? So remember, you go from the full pay down to the 2-pay, or down to the highest one they can do, and then you go down to, let's say, a 3-pay plus a case study. That stuff works so well. Another one is you can buy time. So you could say, gotcha, so if it was January 3rd right now, you'd be 100% moving forward with the investment getting started. Well, look, I don't think the best thing for you is to hop on right now and not be able to fully utilize the resources of the program. I also don't think the best thing for you is to do nothing. So what I'd be willing to do for you is buy you a month of time, extend your program from 3 months to 4 months. That way, technically it's like you're starting on January 3rd, but you're getting all of this extra time. And by the time January 3rd comes around, even if you're only able to put in 20 or 30% of the work you normally would, you're still hitting massive momentum and will really hit the ground running on January 3rd. So if I'm willing to do that for you, are you willing to move forward right now? So what this does, this is key, because what this does is I basically gave them, if timing was the objection, I removed the objection through better logistics, better terms. So I extended the program to where they're going to start January 3rd anyways, but they get all this extra time as a bonus. So now there's no reason for them not to do it. So I'll really be able to see if this is a smokescreen at this point. And then the 24-hour refund, 7-day trial, you can use either of these. We already covered this. So guys, that's it for the training. Thank you very much. We'll see you in the next training.